I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I enjoyed listening to spooky stories, watching paranormal videos late at night, and imagining weird things moving in the corners of dark rooms. But deep down, I always thought it was just entertainment. Something to keep the mind busy when life felt too ordinary. But all of that changed the night I realized I wasn't alone in my own bedroom, the night a ghost quietly sat beside me until I fell asleep. It started on an evening that felt completely normal, almost boring. I'd come home tired from a long day, the kind that drains you mentally more than physically. My head was heavy and I remember thinking I'd sleep early for once. My room felt unusually cold when I walked in, but at the time I blamed the weather. I didn't think anything strange of it, not yet. I changed into comfortable clothes, dimmed the lights, and sat on the edge of my bed scrolling through my phone. The world outside my window was silent. Even the street dogs, who normally barked at anything that moved, were strangely quiet. There's a certain type of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels expectant, like something is waiting. I didn't notice it at first. I only felt a little uneasy, the way you feel when you think someone is standing behind you, even when you know no one is there. Around midnight, I put my phone aside and lay down. I remember flipping my pillow over to the cool side and pulling the blanket up to my chest. I could hear my own breathing, slow and uneven, because something inside me felt restless. I kept trying to shake it off. I just needed sleep, I told myself. But the moment I closed my eyes, I felt it. The slightest pressure on the end of my mattress, as if someone had just sat down. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing moved suddenly. The bed didn't shake. It was subtle, too subtle for anyone else to notice. But I noticed. You always notice when something touches the one place you should feel safest. My eyes snapped open immediately and I didn't even breathe for a second. I thought I imagined it. Maybe I shifted my weight and caused it myself. That was the first thing I told myself, because the alternative made my skin crawl. I stayed still, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fan. Everything felt normal. Completely normal. So normal that for a moment I felt silly for even reacting. But then it happened again. A slow, gentle dip of the mattress. Like someone had settled beside my legs. This time the pressure stayed, soft, steady, almost careful. My heart started beating so fast I could feel it in my ears. I wanted to turn and look to see what was there, but I was scared that if I moved, whatever it was would move too. So I stayed completely still, pretending to be half asleep, breathing slowly to seem calm. I whispered to myself, "It's just my imagination. I'm tired. That's all." But deep down I could feel it. The presence wasn't threatening. It wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, almost comforting. But that made it even more unsettling. Why would something sit beside me like that? And how long had it been doing this without me noticing? The air around me felt a few degrees colder, like someone had opened a window, except I knew I hadn't. A faint scent drifted into the room. Not perfume. Not flowers. More like old paper, the smell libraries have, or pages from a forgotten book. It was oddly familiar, though I couldn't place it. I swallowed hard and finally forced myself to turn my head ever so slightly toward the side of my bed. There was nothing there. No shadow. No figure. No shape. Just the same dim room, the same furniture, everything exactly where it should be. But the pressure didn't disappear. It was still there, on the mattress beside me, as if an invisible body remained seated quietly, watching over me with a patience that didn't feel normal. I didn't know what to do. Should I get up? Turn on the lights? Run out of the room? Or keep pretending I didn't notice? Somehow running felt wrong. It wasn't fear that held me still, it was something else. A strange calmness mixed with my panic. I felt like whatever it was didn't want to hurt me. It wasn't there to scare me. If anything, it felt like it wanted to make sure I wasn't afraid. Minutes passed. I could hear the ticks of my wall clock, each one louder than the last. The quiet presence didn't move or shift. It just stayed. The cold around my legs became more noticeable, like someone sitting still for too long. I closed my eyes again, not because I wanted to sleep, but because somehow it felt like the safest thing to do. After a while, the pressure on the mattress changed. Not much, just a small adjustment, as if the unseen figure had leaned closer. I could feel a soft draft along the side of my face, like someone exhaled gently. It wasn't strong or chilling, just there. Just enough for me to know I wasn't imagining this. And then, quietly, something like a whisper, too faint to understand but unmistakably real, brushed past my ear. I opened my eyes instantly, staring at the darkness in front of me. My breath caught in my throat and every part of me tensed up. I wanted to speak, to ask who or what was there, but the words wouldn't come out. My voice felt stuck somewhere deep inside. The whisper came again. This time I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded calm, gentle. Like someone trying to reassure me that everything was okay. I wasn't okay. But I didn't feel threatened, and that confused me even more. The presence stayed beside me, close enough that the coldness almost felt like a shoulder leaning near mine. My eyelids grew heavy not because I felt safe but because I felt exhausted. The strange sense of calm washed over me again, this time stronger. It was like someone wanted me to rest, to stop worrying, to simply drift off. And slowly my body began to relax. My breathing slowed. My heartbeat steadied. I felt watched, but not in a frightening way. More like someone was keeping me company. Staying with me. Making sure I wasn't alone in the dark. And right when I started drifting towards sleep, right when my consciousness blurred into softness, something happened that made my eyes snap open again. The mattress dipped a third time. Deeper. Heavier. Like someone else had just sat down beside me. And in that exact second, I realized the first presence never left. There were two of them now. And both were sitting quietly beside me. Waiting. Watching. As I lay there frozen, afraid to even breathe. I stayed completely still, trying to understand what was happening without letting the fear take over. The second dip on the mattress hadn't been small or gentle. It felt deliberate, heavier than the first one, as if whoever, or whatever, sat beside me wanted to make sure I noticed. The room stayed silent, and that silence felt loud enough to press against my ears. Even the fan seemed to slow down, its spinning blades brushing the air in a tired rhythm. My mind kept repeating one thought: I'm not alone. Not tonight. The strange thing was that, even with all the fear building inside me, a part of me still sensed no danger. If anything, the air around me felt patient. Like the two invisible presences were waiting for me to react, or maybe waiting for something else entirely. My heart beat faster, and for a moment, I wondered if I could hear theirs too, even though I knew that was impossible. I took slow breaths, trying to stay calm, trying to gather enough courage to move, to speak, or at least to turn my head and look at the empty space beside me. But I couldn't. I felt pinned, not physically but emotionally. Like if I moved too suddenly, the moment would shift into something I wasn't ready for. So instead, I lay there listening to the quiet, feeling the weight on my mattress and the cold air on my skin. The night felt long, much longer than any normal night, and darkness settled into every corner of my room like thick shadows crawling up the walls. I kept my eyes half open, just enough to see the outlines of furniture. Nothing shifted. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed was me. My mind, once so sure the world made sense, now felt fragile. I kept remembering little things that had happened earlier that week. Small moments I ignored because I was too tired or distracted. The light in the hallway flickering at random times. My phone turning on by itself in the middle of the night. The soft tapping on my window I blamed on insects or wind. Back then, none of it seemed strange. But now, lying in the cold darkness with two unseen presences beside me, those memories became pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I'd been collecting. I wondered if the signs had been there longer than I realized. Maybe days. Maybe weeks. Maybe even longer. A soft sound, almost like fabric being brushed, came from my left. It wasn't loud, but it was close. Too close. The cold intensified for a moment before settling again. I held my breath, waiting for something else to happen. But nothing did. The presence on my left stayed perfectly still, as if listening to my heartbeat, matching the rhythm of my breaths. My thoughts drifted to the idea that maybe these ghosts, if that's what they were, weren't new to my room. Maybe they weren't visitors. Maybe they'd been here before, when I was too tired to notice, too distracted to pay attention, too busy convincing myself that nothing unusual ever happened to me. The thought sent a chill down my spine, but at the same time, it made everything feel strangely familiar. When I finally found my voice, it came out as a whisper. "Who's there?" I barely heard my own words. They felt small, swallowed by the darkness. For a moment, nothing responded. The silence stretched so long that I thought I'd imagined speaking at all. Then, faintly, a soft shift on the mattress answered me. Not a word, just a small movement, like the presence was acknowledging my question. I closed my eyes again, not because I wasn't scared, but because keeping them open made everything feel too real. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I tried to calm my racing mind by focusing on my breathing. In and out. Slow and steady. I didn't know why these presences were here, but my instinct told me they weren't angry or harmful. They felt familiar. As if they knew me or recognized me somehow. I wondered if the ghosts had memories, if they remembered places they once lived or people they once cared about. Maybe they weren't here to frighten me. Maybe they were trapped, or lonely, or simply drawn to the warmth of someone who could sense them. My curiosity grew stronger than my fear, just enough to let me think clearly again. The room didn't feel random anymore. Everything felt connected. The silence outside. The cold air. The flickering hallway light earlier in the evening. Even the strange dream I'd been having for the past week. The one where someone sat at the edge of my bed, watching over me like a guardian. Each time I woke up from that dream, I felt oddly rested, as if someone had stayed with me through the night. I always told myself it was just my imagination trying to comfort me during stressful days. But what if it hadn't been imagination? What if the dream wasn't a dream? My eyelids felt heavy again, but I forced myself to stay awake, even though the calmness around me made it harder. It was like the two presences wanted me to fall asleep. Not in a dangerous way, but in a protective one. Almost like they'd been doing this before, sitting with me until I drifted off, keeping the silence steady so my mind could finally rest. For a moment, a strange warmth washed through me, replacing the fear with something softer, almost nostalgic. I had a memory of sitting beside my younger cousin when he was scared one night. I didn't say anything to him. I just sat beside him until he fell asleep, breathing slowly so he would match my rhythm. Maybe these presences were doing the same for me. But then another thought hit me, one that broke the fragile calm I had been feeling. If they were watching over me like that, why tonight? Why reveal themselves now? Why let me feel their weight on the mattress, their cold breath, their faint whispers? What changed? The room seemed to grow colder as that question formed in my mind. The presence on my right shifted again just slightly. Enough for me to feel the mattress press down a little deeper. It wasn't threatening, but it was purposeful. Like it heard my thoughts and wanted to respond. I opened my eyes. The room was darker than before, or maybe my vision struggled to adjust. A soft, barely noticeable glow hovered near the far corner. Nothing bright, nothing intense, just a dim shimmer like someone had brushed the air with pale light. I blinked a few times, thinking it was a trick of my tired eyes, but the glow stayed. And slowly it moved. Not toward me, not away, just drifting gently like dust caught in a slow current. The presences didn't vanish when the glow appeared. They stayed beside me, silent, patient, unmoving. But the glow felt different from them. It felt like something else entirely. Something that didn't belong with the calmness they brought. The glow pulsed once, faintly, and I felt a small shiver run down my spine. My throat tightened. For the first time I sensed something like warning in the air. The temperature dropped again, and this time it wasn't gentle. The cold bit into my arms and seeped through the blanket, making my skin prickle. The two presences leaned closer, both of them at the same time. Not toward the glow. Toward me. As if they were trying to shield me from something. I clutched the blanket tighter, my breath unsteady, my heart pounding again. The glow pulsed once more, slightly brighter this time, and the room seemed to breathe with it. That was when I understood something important. The two ghosts sitting beside me weren't the frightening part. They were the warning. And whatever that faint glow in the corner was, it wasn't here to sit with me. It was here for something else. And it had finally noticed I was awake. The glow in the corner didn't move fast. It didn't rush toward me or flicker like a flame. It just hovered there, pulsing with slow breaths of pale light, as if it was thinking, or waiting. The two presences beside me stayed still, but I could feel a shift in the air around them. The calmness they brought earlier had changed into something more alert, almost protective. The cold on my mattress wasn't just cold anymore. It felt tense, like they were preparing for something I didn't understand. I kept staring at the glow, afraid to blink, too scared to look away. My thoughts raced in circles, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The first two spirits didn't scare me the way I expected. They were strange, yes, but gentle in a way that made their presence feel almost familiar. But this glow was different. It didn't feel familiar at all. It felt like something unknown, something I wasn't supposed to see. Suddenly, the faint light stretched slightly, like a thin mist reaching toward the ceiling. Not a shape, not a figure, just a drift of brightness that carried a strange weight. My heart sped up again, thumping like a warning inside my chest. I remembered every small thing that had felt strange in my room the past few days. The tapping on the window at night. The feeling of being watched when I turned off the lights. Even the odd dream where someone whispered my name, not with comfort but with urgency. Maybe all of this wasn't random. Maybe I had ignored signs that were trying to tell me something, warn me about something coming closer day by day. The bed dipped again, this time so gently I barely felt it, but enough to remind me the two ghosts hadn't left. If anything, they were closer. I could sense them leaning in, almost pressing against the air around me. I tried to slow my breathing, but the fear made my chest feel tight. I whispered very quietly, "What do you want?" No answer came from the glow. But the ghost on my right shifted, and the coldness wrapped lightly around my arm, almost like a hand resting there. Not gripping. Not freezing. Just touching. The strange comfort of it made me shiver, but it also calmed me enough to breathe again. Then, faintly, the glow dimmed for a second. Not like it lost energy, more like it reacted to something around it. I didn't know if it could sense the two presences beside me, but part of me felt certain it could. Was aware of them. Aware of me. Aware of this room that suddenly didn't feel like my room anymore. The deeper conflict began to form in my mind. There was something happening between these entities, some silent tension I wasn't meant to interrupt. The two ghosts seemed like watchers, guards even, while the glowing presence felt like an intruder. And I was caught in the middle of whatever silent conversation or struggle existed between them. The glow lifted slightly off the floor, drifting upward like fog. My breath hitched as I watched it rise. It didn't look solid, but it also didn't look harmless. I couldn't explain it, but the air around it felt heavy, like the atmosphere before a storm. I felt it pressing against my skin even from across the room, like it carried an emotion, something cold, searching, maybe even lonely. Meanwhile, the presence on my left moved closer to my shoulder. The mattress sank a little deeper. My instinct told me it wasn't afraid of the glow, but it didn't want me to be afraid either. That made everything more confusing. How could something unseen be trying to protect me from something I could actually see? My mind drifted to memories I rarely thought about. Nights long ago when I would wake up crying as a kid, convinced someone was sitting at the end of my bed. My mother would tell me it was just a dream, that I had imagined it. But the fear always felt too real. Over time I forgot those nights. I buried them, thinking they were just childhood nightmares. But now, lying here with the same weight on my bed and the same cold air brushing my skin, I wondered if I hadn't imagined anything at all. Maybe these presences weren't new. Maybe they had been with me long before I understood what I was feeling. That thought should have made everything worse, but instead it settled strangely in my chest. If these two ghosts had watched over me since I was a child, then maybe they weren't here to harm me. Maybe they had their own history connected to mine, one I didn't know yet. A soft click broke through the silence. My closet door shifted slightly. I felt my blood run cold. It didn't open fully, just enough to make a thin line of darkness appear. I didn't want to look, but my eyes were already locked onto it. The glow reacted immediately, pulsing brighter as if sensing a new movement in the room. For the first time, I realized the glow wasn't the only thing moving. Something else stirred from inside the closet. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a tiny shift, like fabric sliding against wood or a faint footstep from a very small, very light figure. I froze as the glow brightened a little more, and the two ghosts beside me tensed in a way I could feel through the mattress. Everything in the room felt connected now. The glow. The presences. The closet. Me. All part of some strange story that had been waiting in the shadows for a long time. The presence on my right pressed a little closer, as if whispering without words, "Don't move." And I didn't. My eyes locked on the thin line of darkness in the cracked closet door. A tiny shift sounded again. Then silence. Then another small movement, almost like someone, or something, trying to push the door open just a little more. My breath caught. My chest tightened. The glow shifted toward the closet in a slow, curious motion. The two spirits beside me stayed still, but their energy felt sharper now, like they were preparing for whatever was inside. That was when I realized the truth hidden in the air around me. There weren't just two ghosts in my room. There weren't even three. There were more. Something had been watching from the closet long before the glow arrived. And whatever it was waking up. The thin crack in the closet door felt like an open eye staring back at me. I couldn't see anything inside, but I could feel something there, something quiet, patient, and waiting. The glow in the corner pulsed brighter, as if drawn toward that darkness. The two spirits beside me, the ones who had been calm and steady all night, leaned in closer, tightening the cold around my arms and shoulders. The tension in the room felt like invisible strings pulling everything toward one single point. My breaths became shallow, and I could hear my heartbeat echoing inside my ears. Nothing in the room moved loudly, yet every tiny shift felt amplified. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The closet door moved again. Just a small nudge, no more than an inch. But that tiny sound cut through the silence so sharply it made my whole body tense. I blinked once, trying to keep my eyes from watering. The glow drifted a little closer to the closet, like it was answering some silent call from inside. I whispered without meaning to, "Please don't." I didn't even know who I was talking to, the glowing presence, the spirits beside me, or the thing hidden in the dark. But the moment the words left my lips, the temperature around me dropped again. The two ghosts beside me pushed closer, almost surrounding me now, their cold turning firm, solid, protective. The glow paused midair. It hovered there, trembling slightly as if hesitant. And then from the closet a small delicate sound came out, one that didn't belong inside a place so dark and still. A soft, uneven breath. My entire body froze. It didn't sound threatening. If anything, it sounded weak, almost fragile, like someone trying to speak but unable to form words. The breath came again, slightly louder this time. I felt something inside me tighten, not just from fear but from a strange, unexpected sense of empathy. Whoever, or whatever, was in there didn't sound like a monster. It sounded scared. The glow reacted instantly, dimming for a moment as if startled. The spirits beside me shifted their presence in a way I could feel through the mattress, a silent communication passing between all three energies in the room. I wasn't supposed to understand any of this, yet part of me felt like I did. The glowing presence wasn't here for me. It was here for the thing in the closet. The two spirits weren't here to harm either of them. They were here for me, blocking me from whatever invisible pull was happening across the room. The breath from the closet came again, but this time it wasn't small. It was deeper. More intentional. The door creaked just enough to reveal a little more of the darkness inside. I felt a cold draft brush across the floor, slipping under my bed and curling up around my ankles. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "Who's in there?" No answer. Only another breath, this one shaky as if gathering strength. The glow pulled back abruptly, retreating toward the ceiling like someone had yanked it upward. The motion was so sudden it made my heart skip. It wasn't floating anymore, it was reacting. Afraid or cautious, I couldn't tell. The spirits beside me leaned against the mattress so firmly now that the fabric stretched slightly under their weight. They felt braced, like they were protecting me from the glow instead of the thing inside the closet. Everything felt wrong and right at the same time. Wrong because nothing about this was normal, glowing mist, protective spirits, breaths from shadows. But right because something deep inside me whispered that this was the night everything was meant to come together. The night secrets came out of hiding. The glow flickered again, this time with more intensity, throwing faint shapes across the walls. Not human shapes, just twisted shadows cast by light that shouldn't exist. The faint shifting inside the closet grew louder, like someone slowly dragging their hand along the wooden floor. I gripped the blanket tightly, my knuckles turning white under the fabric. I couldn't speak. I couldn't look away. The entire room felt like a storm building without wind, silent but powerful enough to shake something inside my chest. The glow dropped lower, inching toward the closet again. It moved with purpose now, almost drawn toward whatever was breathing in the dark. As it approached, the shadows inside the crack shifted, curling subtly upward like smoke rising from a hidden flame. The two spirits pressed against me harder, anchoring me to the bed. I could feel a strange mix of emotions radiating from them, anxious, protective, tense. They weren't afraid for themselves. They were afraid for me. Then something new happened. Something that made the hair on my arms stand straight. A faint whisper, not close, not beside me but from inside the closet, finally formed into a soft, trembling word. "Don't." My heart stopped for a moment. The voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't angry. It sounded young, frightened, desperate. The glow jerked in response, like the word had pushed it backward. The two spirits beside me reacted instantly, cold intensifying, presence sharp, like a silent stay still, pulsing through the air. The closet door creaked again, just a fraction of an inch, but enough for a small, pale flicker to escape from within. Not glowing like the other presence. More like reflected light, eyes catching the faint shimmer of the glow. I barely saw it, just a glimmer between the shadows, but it was enough to make my breath catch. There was someone in there. Someone who wasn't glowing. Someone who wasn't invisible. Someone who didn't want the glow to come closer. The glow pushed forward anyway, slowly, deliberately. The trembling whisper from the closet repeated, stronger this time. "Don't, please?" Something deep inside my chest twisted at the sound. It wasn't a warning. It was a plea. The spirits beside me reacted again. The cold around me tightened, almost like arms holding me back from moving or calling out. They didn't want me involved, not yet. The glow reached the closet door and hovered inches from the crack. The light pulsed once, twice, as if communicating with whatever hid inside. The glimmer of eyes shifted, shrinking back deeper into the darkness. I felt the moment before it happened. The air thickened. The temperature dropped another few degrees. And then, a hand reached out from the crack. Small, pale, slightly trembling. Not threatening. Not harmful. Just reaching. Reaching toward the glow. Reaching toward help. Reaching toward something I didn't understand. And the glow. It reached back. Just as the two ghosts beside me. tightened their grip on the mattress, slid closer to me, and braced themselves, as if the real danger was just about to begin. The small, pale hand reaching out from the darkness froze the entire room in place. Even the glow seemed stunned, its soft light flickering in an uneven rhythm. My breath caught in my throat as the fingertips stretched just a little farther, trembling with fear or effort. I couldn't tell which. The two spirits beside me tightened around me again, not hurting, just anchoring, like they knew whatever was about to happen would pull everything in a direction none of us could stop. The glow drifted an inch closer to the hand. Then another inch. The space between them thinned, filled with a silent tension that felt almost electric, like the air was holding itself steady in anticipation. I waited for their fingers to meet, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing through the mattress. But just before the glow touched that trembling hand, something else shifted. Not in the closet. Not beside me. Behind me. The hair on the back of my neck lifted before I even heard it. A tiny exhale, warm and faint, like someone standing inches from me, their breath brushing against my ear. I froze completely. The spirits beside me felt it too. Their cold bodies stiffened, pulling closer, almost shielding me from behind. But they weren't shielding me from the glow. Or the hand. They were shielding me from something I hadn't sensed until now. Another presence. A fourth one. This one wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either. It felt empty. A hollow space pressing into the room. Something that didn't belong to the silent battle unfolding between the glow and the figure in the closet. Something outside their conflict entirely. The whisper that rose behind me wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. It was soft, almost curious, but so close I felt the words vibrate through my spine. You shouldn't watch this. My body locked. The fear was instant and overwhelming, not because the voice sounded threatening but because it sounded calm. Too calm. Like someone who'd been waiting for the exact moment to speak up. I wanted to turn around but fear pinned me down harder than the mattress ever could. The two protective spirits pressed against either side of me, their presence shifting rapidly between panic and warning. The glow jerked sharply, its soft light trembling as if reacting to the new presence behind me. And the small hand in the closet withdrew in a quick, frightened motion, disappearing into the darkness with a soft scrape. The closet door rattled, not from being pushed, but from something inside pulling away in fear. The glow followed that movement immediately, brightening with sudden urgency, as if trying to keep the figure inside from retreating. But the moment it leaned in, the new presence behind me released another slow breath, this time colder, heavier, and far more deliberate. The entire room trembled. Not physically, but in a way that made the air quiver like reality was stretching too thin around us. The glow recoiled again, more violently, like it sensed something it didn't expect. The two spirits beside me pressed closer still, their cold sinking deeper into the mattress, as if bracing for another shift in the room's balance. Then it happened, the second plot twist I never saw coming. The air behind me thickened, and the presence spoke again, its whisper sliding into the dark like it had been rehearsed. They're not protecting you from what's in the closet. A chill snapped down my spine. They're protecting it, from you? My breath shattered. The glow dimmed, almost shrinking. Inside the closet, the small figure whimpered. And the two spirits beside me, the ones I thought were watching over me all night, went completely still. Not protective. Not fearful. Still. As if the truth had finally broken through the silence they'd held around me from the beginning. My chest tightened painfully, my pulse racing so fast I thought I might faint. My mind flashed back to the dreams I'd been having. Someone sitting beside me, whispering, watching. I thought they were comforting dreams, signs of protection. But now, hearing the words from the presence behind me, a horrible realization sank in. Maybe the things in my room weren't drawn to me because I needed comfort. Maybe they were drawn to me because something in me frightened the thing in the closet. Maybe the ghosts weren't here as guardians. Maybe they were here as barriers. And whatever they were trying to hold back wasn't the glow. Wasn't the closet. Was me. The glow pulsed again, but this time the light bent, stretching toward me, not the closet. Like it was trying to illuminate something hidden around my body, something even I hadn't noticed was there. The presence behind me leaned closer, its whisper brushing my ear one more time, soft but unmistakably serious. Don't you remember what you did? My heart stopped. A memory flashed, just a fragment, too quick to understand but enough to make my stomach twist. A childhood moment. A dark room. A frightened voice calling my name. A hand reaching for help. Then darkness. The glow jerked again, violent this time. The two spirits pressed down against me, shaking as if resisting something pulling at them. The closet rattled harder, a a soft cry rising from inside. Everything in the room pulled tight around a truth that was still hidden from me but dangerously close to emerging. And the voice behind me whispered one last thing. The twist that made the entire room feel like it turned inside out. You're not the one being haunted. A tremor surged through the mattress. The glow flared bright. The closet door flew open. And everything in the room lurched toward the truth waiting in the dark. The moment I stepped back into my room, everything felt heavier than before, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I didn't bother turning on the main light. I just let the dim glow from the hallway spill across the floor as I stood there, trying to take a steady breath. For nights I had felt a presence, soft, patient, almost protective, but tonight the feeling had shifted. It wasn't just watching. It was waiting. And deep down I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. I had reached the point where the truth couldn't hide in the shadows. I walked slowly toward the chair beside my bed, the same chair where the ghost had been sitting every night until I fell asleep. The shape wasn't visible yet, but the air around it felt warmer than the rest of the room. I whispered almost without thinking, "I know you're here." The room didn't echo the way it normally did. Instead, my voice felt swallowed by something unseen. My heart pounded, but I wasn't afraid the way I once was. After everything I had learned, every strange whisper, every memory that wasn't mine, every cold shiver that wasn't just the wind, I knew this moment was coming. The ghost appeared slowly like fog taking form. Not threatening. Not angry. Just tired. Its outline matched the young man I had seen before in the mirror reflections, the man who had been watching over me since the first night. His eyes weren't empty anymore, they held something like relief mixed with something I couldn't name. I didn't step back this time. Instead, I nodded, letting him know I was ready. "You were trying to protect me," I whispered. "From what?" The ghost didn't speak with words, but a sudden rush of images filled my mind, memories that weren't mine. A small house. A fire. A hand reaching out. A feeling of failing someone you love. The guilt hit me so strongly I had to sit down. It was his story, his fear, his unfinished past. And somehow, without knowing it, I had been pulled into it. But there was something else in those memories, something darker. A shadow behind him, taller than him, heavier than him. Something that had followed him long before he ever reached my room. The ghost's presence flickered, and I felt his worry pressing against me. "You're not warning me about yourself," I said in a trembling voice. "You're warning me about something else." The room shuddered faintly, like the walls themselves were reacting to my words. A soft, rhythmic tapping began near the window. Not loud. Just steady. The same tapping I had heard the night I first saw the ghost sitting beside me. Back then I thought it was the wind. I knew better now. He moved closer, not threatening but urgent, and placed a cold, weightless hand near my shoulder. I didn't feel fingers, just the pressure of a presence trying desperately to get a message across. The tapping grew louder. The room dimmed. My chest tightened as if the air was being squeezed from every angle. Then I heard it. A second presence. A new one. Its breathing wasn't like his, soft and distant, but harsher, like something forcing its way into a space it wasn't invited to. The ghost in front of me stiffened, his outline flickering like a flame struggling to stay lit. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for me. The tapping stopped suddenly, replaced by a slow dragging sound across the floor, moving toward my door. I turned, but the hallway behind the doorway was pitch black, darker than it should have been with the lights still on. My pulse raced as a shape shifted in the shadows, far taller than the ghost beside me. My protector moved between me and the door, his glow attempting to hold back whatever was creeping closer. For a moment I could hear my own heartbeat louder than anything else in the world. And then, with a sound like a breath caught in a throat, the tall shadow stepped fully into view. It didn't have a face, at least not one I could make out. Just a blur of darkness shaped like a person but wrong in every way. The ghost beside me pushed forward, brighter now, like he was trying to shield me with everything he had left. The dark figure lunged. The light in the room exploded, flooding everything in white. I felt myself fall backward, my head hitting the edge of the bed frame, and everything went silent for a moment. When I opened my eyes, the tall shadow was gone, vanished as if ripped away by some unseen force. But the ghost was weakening, his form nearly transparent. His shoulders lowered like he had spent everything he had to keep me safe. "You saved me," I whispered, sitting up slowly. My voice cracked, and for a second I thought he might disappear entirely. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he looked at me with a softness that hurt to see. A final image filled my mind, his last memory, the one he never let me see completely before. I saw him standing near a small bed, watching over someone else the way he had watched over me. A child. Sick. Fragile. Someone he wanted to protect, but couldn't. The guilt was the chain keeping him here, trapped between worlds. Watching me wasn't just protection. It was redemption. A second chance to do what he failed to do once before. The ghost stepped back from me, his glow fading but peaceful now. He wasn't afraid anymore. The shadow was gone. The story he had carried for years, finished. His outline broke into soft, floating particles of light that drifted upward like dust caught in the sun. But just before the last part of him disappeared, something unexpected happened. The air grew cold again, sharper than before. A whisper brushed my ear, but it wasn't his voice this time. It was deeper, rougher, familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "I'm not done." I froze. The warmth from the ghost's final glow vanished instantly, leaving me alone in the room with that chilling voice echoing inside the walls. The tall shadow hadn't been defeated. It had been interrupted. And now it knew my name. It knew where I lived. It knew I could see it. And the worst part, it sounded closer than before. Closer than the doorway. Closer than the window. So close, it felt like it was right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring ahead, knowing that the real story, the real danger, was only beginning now. And this time, there was no ghost left to sit beside me until I fell asleep. I sat frozen on the floor for what felt like minutes, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid to even blink. The whisper, that cold, heavy voice, still echoed in my head. I kept expecting a hand to land on my shoulder or a shadow to sweep across the wall. But nothing happened. The room stayed still, quiet, almost painfully normal. Slowly, I forced myself to turn around even though every part of me begged not to. There was nothing behind me. No shadow. No faint outline. Just the soft glow of my nightstand lamp and the chair where the ghost used to sit. My heartbeat eased a little, enough for me to stand. The house felt different now, like something heavy had been shaken loose. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The street outside was calm. A lone streetlight flickered, throwing pale light across the empty sidewalk. No dark figure. No movement. No sign of anything watching. Still, the whisper stayed sharp in my memory. I knew it hadn't been a dream or a trick of fear. The shadow had spoken. It wasn't gone. Just hiding. I returned to my bed and sat on the edge, taking a slow breath. For the first time in weeks, the chair beside me was empty in a way that felt final. The ghost, the one who had watched over me night after night, he was gone. Not fading, not hiding, gone. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. He had protected me, guided me, even comforted me in his own silent way. And now he had finally found peace. But that left me with a question I didn't want to think too hard about. If he was gone and the shadow was still out there, what was I supposed to do now? I stood up and turned on every light in the room. It felt silly, but the brightness helped. It made the corners less threatening. I walked around, touching things, grounding myself in the normal world. My desk. My books. My jacket thrown over the chair. All ordinary things that reminded me I was still here, alive, awake, and not trapped in something supernatural. As I touched the desk, I noticed something strange lying next to my notebook. A folded piece of paper. My heart jumped. I hadn't put anything there. With shaky fingers, I picked it up. The paper was old, almost fragile. When I opened it, I saw handwriting, not mine. Uneven, faint, but readable. It said, "You are safe now. Don't look for it. Live your life." I didn't need a signature. I knew exactly who it came from. It was his final message. A goodbye. A reassurance. And maybe a warning. I sank into the chair and stared at the words. Safe now. But the whisper had said, "I'm not done." The ghost said, "Don't look for it." Who was I supposed to believe? Maybe both were true. Maybe safety wasn't perfect or permanent, but something that came in moments. Moments the ghost had fought to buy for me. Maybe it was up to me now to decide what to do with that gift. For the next few days, I noticed little changes around the house. The cold spots that used to follow me were gone. The tapping at the window stopped. I slept without feeling watched. Even my dreams were calmer, no longer filled with strange shadows or memories that weren't mine. It felt like life was slowly returning to normal. But the memory of the shadow lingered, not haunting, just reminding. A quiet presence at the edge of my thoughts, as if waiting to see whether I would give it power by being afraid. I chose not to. I focused on my routines, making breakfast, going to work, talking to people I had avoided for too long. It felt good to be grounded again, to build something real instead of running from something invisible. One evening, I even sat in my room with the lights off, testing myself. The quiet wasn't scary anymore. The dark felt like just dark. Not a doorway. Not a warning. Just a normal part of night. Still, I kept the note from the ghost in my drawer. I didn't need to look at it often. Knowing it was there was enough. It reminded me that the strange nights hadn't been my imagination. They were real, but they were also over. The ghost had moved on. And maybe, in a way, so had I. Weeks passed and nothing unusual happened. No whispers. No shadows. No signs of anything trying to come back. I realized then that the ghost's final act, facing the shadow to protect me, had changed something. Not just in the room but in me. I wasn't the same anxious person waiting for something terrifying to happen. I had faced fear, loss, and the unknown, and I had come through it with a kind of quiet strength I never expected. One afternoon, I walked to the old empty lot down the street, the place that always felt strangely peaceful to me. The sun was warm, the air soft, and the world felt simple again. As I sat on a small stone, I closed my eyes and silently thanked the ghost for everything. His presence, his help, his protection. I knew he would never hear me, but that wasn't the point. Gratitude didn't need an audience. On the way home, something small caught my eye, a faint shimmer in the corner of a window across the street. Not a figure. Not a shadow. Just a brief flicker of light, like sunlight catching dust in the air. I paused, watching it fade. Part of me wondered if it was him just checking in one last time. Or maybe it was nothing at all, just a trick of the evening light. I smiled either way. The world didn't feel threatening anymore. That night, I lay in bed with the lamp off, the room peaceful and still. The chair beside me remained empty, but it didn't feel lonely or ominous. Just was. I breathed slowly, letting the quiet settle around me. No presence. No whisper. No cold air. I felt myself drift into sleep naturally for the first time in a long while. Just before I fell asleep, a thought formed, soft, simple, comforting. The ghost had watched over me until he could finally let go. Now it was my turn to live fully, without fear, without shadows, without waiting for something to appear in the dark. The world was still mysterious, still filled with things we didn't understand, but it didn't have to be frightening. Sometimes the unknown held danger, yes, but sometimes it held kindness, protection, and second chances. As I drifted off, the last thing I felt wasn't fear at all. It was peace. Real quiet peace. And somewhere, in a place I couldn't see or name, I hoped the ghost finally felt the same.